The billionaire stood silently by his son's grave, the weight of grief pressing heavier than his fortune. Then he saw him, a frail boy, barefoot and shivering, clutching a wilted flower. "What are you doing here?" he asked, voice thick with sorrow. The boy looked up, eyes hollow but hauntingly familiar. What he said next shattered everything the billionaire thought he knew about loss. The wind was cold that morning as billionaire Charles Remington knelt at his son's grave. It had been a year since the accident, but the pain hadn't lessened. He came here every Sunday, always alone, always silent. But today, something was different. A small figure stood across the graveyard, a boy, maybe 10, dressed in torn clothes, barefoot, holding a single, wilted daisy. He stood still, eyes fixed on the marble headstone with a kind of knowing sadness. "Who are you?" Charles asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. The boy looked up, his eyes hollow yet deep, as if they carried more years than his age allowed. "I knew him," he said simply. Charles frowned. His son had gone to private schools, traveled the world, lived in luxury. How could this poor boy have known him? The boy knelt and gently placed the daisy on the grave. He used to sneak out to the shelter. He'd bring food. Books. He said no one should feel forgotten. Charles felt the ground shift beneath him. Not literally, but in his heart. His son had lived a secret life of kindness, one even his father hadn't known about. "Why are you here today?" Charles asked. The boy hesitated. "Today was our day, the day he promised we'd play soccer in the park." Charles blinked back tears. For the first time in a year, they weren't from grief alone, they were from pride, awe, and heartbreak. Without a word, he took the boy's hand. "Let's go," he said softly. "He'd want us to play." And in that moment, two souls, broken by loss but bonded by love, began to heal, one step, one kick, one memory at a time. Every Sunday, rain or shine, Jonathan Hale visited the small cemetery on the hill, the final resting place of his only son, Matthew. The loss still hollowed him out daily, a grief money and power couldn't fix. On this particular morning, as gray clouds rolled across the sky, Jonathan felt more alone than ever. Until he saw him. A boy, thin, pale, maybe 9 or 10, stood a few feet away, staring at Matthew's gravestone. His clothes were worn, his shoes mismatched, but his expression was unmistakably tender. Jonathan approached, his voice cautious. "Do you know my son?" The boy nodded slowly. "He was my friend." Impossible, Jonathan thought. Matthew had lived a sheltered, privileged life. Yet something in the boy's eyes stopped him from doubting. "He used to visit the youth center," the boy continued. "He never told anyone. He'd bring food, play games, even help with homework. He told me he wished his dad would understand." Jonathan's heart clenched. His son had hidden this part of himself, a quiet hero, reaching out to those forgotten. The boy pulled a small object from his pocket, a folded paper airplane. "He taught me how to make this. Said every time I flew one, it'd carry a wish to the sky." Jonathan took the paper plane, tears threatening to spill. For the first time, he saw his son not just as the boy he raised, but as the man he had become. "Thank you," he whispered, voice breaking. The boy smiled. He believed in second chances. As Jonathan watched the paper plane soar into the sky, he realized this encounter wasn't coincidence. It was a gift, a final message from his son to keep believing, and to start again. Elliot Grayson, a billionaire known for his empire and silence, stood alone at his son's grave. It had been 2 years since cancer took Liam, 2 years of sorrow buried beneath layers of wealth and work. He visited the cemetery every week, always early, always alone. But this morning, a quiet presence disturbed his routine. A boy sat cross-legged near the headstone, head bowed, clutching a small toy car. He couldn't have been older than 8. His clothes were faded, shoes too big for his feet. Yet he looked comfortable, as if he belonged. "Who are you?" Elliot asked, his voice low but firm. The boy looked up slowly. "My name's Noah. Liam used to visit me." Elliot froze. "He'd come to the hospital," the boy continued. "We were in the same ward. He had more pain than he showed. But he always brought toys, like this one. Said if we made it out, we'd race them in the park. Elliot's throat tightened. Liam never told him about any hospital visits besides his own treatment. The boy brushed dirt gently from the grave, then set the toy car beside it. He said you were too sad to talk about the stuff that mattered, Noah said softly. But he forgave you. Tears welled in Elliot's eyes. He knelt beside the boy, silence thick between them. Would you like to go for a drive? Elliot asked, gesturing to his car nearby. Noah nodded, eyes lighting up. Liam always wanted us to ride in a sports car. Elliot smiled faintly. Then let's make that happen. As they walked away from the grave, hand in hand, Elliot realized this meeting wasn't chance. It was his son's way of helping him heal through a boy who still carried his light. The cemetery was silent, blanketed in a cold morning mist. Thomas Reed, a billionaire haunted by regret, stood before his son's grave, a towering stone monument for a life lost too soon. Grief had carved deep lines into his once proud face, and no amount of success could fill the void left behind. But that morning, something changed. A boy, thin, barefoot, no older than 10, stood just beyond the grave, staring at the name etched into stone. He held a single sunflower, its petals faded but still bright. Thomas watched, puzzled and cautious. Did you know him? He asked, stepping closer. The boy nodded, eyes not leaving the grave. He used to visit the shelter where I stay. Brought me books. Told me stories. Said I reminded him of someone. Thomas's heart pounded. His son had never mentioned this. What's your name? He asked. Eli, the boy replied. He told me he had a brother who didn't make it. Said if he ever disappeared, I should come here. That someone would find me. Thomas's breath caught in his throat. I don't have a brother, he said slowly. The boy finally looked up, eyes shining. He said you didn't know. A DNA test days later would confirm the impossible. Eli was Thomas's son, the product of a brief relationship his son had discovered and kept secret, hoping to unite a broken family. What followed changed everything. Thomas adopted Eli, not just out of duty, but love. And in Eli's laughter, he heard echoes of both his sons, one lost, one found. Some stories are stranger than fiction, and some truths so powerful they rewrite lives. What happened that day wasn't coincidence, it was destiny, and it healed a heart once thought beyond repair. Richard Langston had everything: power, wealth, and a name that echoed through boardrooms and headlines. But none of it mattered anymore. Not since the accident that took his only son, Jacob. The world saw a titan of industry. Behind closed doors, he was a father drowning in grief. On the anniversary of Jacob's death, Richard visited the cemetery just after dawn, as he always did. Flowers in hand, he made his way to the polished marble grave, preparing for another morning of silent mourning. But someone was already there. A boy, small and frail, knelt at the gravestone. He wore a second-hand jacket and scuffed sneakers. In his hands, he held a hand-drawn card, simple, with crooked letters, "To my best friend, Jacob." Richard approached, stunned. "How do you know my son?" The boy looked up, face pale but sincere. "He used to come to the orphanage. Played soccer with us. Helped with homework. He said he wanted to adopt a little brother someday." Emotion surged in Richard's chest. A mix of shock, sorrow, and something new, pride. He never knew this side of Jacob. His son had reached out to others, lived with compassion that his father had overlooked. "What's your name?" Richard asked, voice trembling. "Leo," the boy replied. "He promised he'd come back for me." A silence fell between them, thick with heartbreak. "Then, without thinking," Richard said, "he would have wanted me to find you." In that instant, everything changed. The boy Jacob had loved became the boy Richard would raise. And the grave that once symbolized the end became a new beginning. Sometimes, the most tragic moments lead to the most powerful transformations, and one encounter can give life new meaning, even in the shadow of loss. Stephen Carter was the kind of man people read about in business magazines, a billionaire tycoon with private jets, towering skyscrapers, and a reputation for being untouchable. But behind the success was a man who hadn't smiled since losing his son, Adam, 3 years ago. Grief had turned his world into a quiet, sterile routine of meetings and solitude. One chilly morning, as Stephen visited his son's grave like he always did on the anniversary, he noticed someone sitting nearby. A boy thin, with dirt-smudged cheeks and worn-out clothes, was humming softly as he traced Adam's name on the stone. Stephen hesitated, then walked closer. "Do you know him?" he asked. The boy nodded. "He used to come to the community center. He'd bring snacks, read books to us, he even taught me how to draw." Stephen blinked, stunned. His son had never mentioned volunteering. The boy reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled sketch of a rocket, something Adam used to draw as a child. "He said one day I'd build something great," the boy said proudly. "He believed in me." For the first time in years, Stephen felt something shift, the icy grip of grief beginning to thaw. He knelt beside the boy. "What's your name?" he asked. "Marcus," the boy replied. Stephen looked at the sketch again, then back at Marcus. "Would you like to come visit the Carter Foundation? I think we have some building to do." That day marked the start of Stephen's unlikely journey, not back to the life he once had, but forward into something new. Through a boy his son had quietly mentored, Stephen found purpose again. And in helping Marcus chase his dreams, he finally began to heal his own heart.